good morning. Actually, good afternoon. I had to think about that for a second. It's already afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Brenda Meller bringing you back for another slice of social media pie, and very excited to be with all of you here today. Before we get started with our conversation with Christine, I just want to welcome everyone who is watching, and I want to invite you to please leave a comment below. Let us know where in the world you're watching from, or realistically, Christine, where in the household you're watching us from. And I just want to take a moment to invite, to introduce my very special guest, Christine Robinson. Hey, Christine, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Good. Well, it's a delight being able to have the chance to chat with you. And you and I met kind of virtually a little over a month ago. It was the Friday before I had a LinkedIn Live-a-thon, and I had one of my speakers cancel at the very last minute due to illness, and it happens, life happens. But I wasn't worried. I put an ask out to the LinkedIn universe, and I said, hey, who knows someone who can come on a discussion and talk about, I think it was about salary negotiation for job seekers. And remind me, did you see the post? Did someone tag you? How did you find that?
Yeah. Tom Daniels, actually from Bowling Green. He liked your post, and that's how we got connected. It was really serendipitous, I would say.
Yeah, the power of your network. And I'm going to give a little tag to Tom right now. I'm not sure if he's out there on LinkedIn watching or not, but Tom, if you're there, say hi in comments. And for those of you who are watching, could you guys do me a favor, leave a comment? Just let us know, because this helps me to make sure that the LinkedIn live stream is working. Every now and again, Christine, I have like a hiccup that happens, like StreamYard is not talking to LinkedIn. LinkedIn doesn't pick up the transmission. And when that happens, what I do is I'll go onto LinkedIn and I'll quickly post, and I'll say, here's the YouTube playback, so that we can make sure that the stream is actually working. So I'm going to give it just a second, wait for a comment to come in before we get into our conversation today. And I'm refreshing in another page in the background. I have like the stream running over here too, so I can kind of see it. Waiting for it to come up. Okay, I do see it in here, and I do see that there are comments coming in on LinkedIn, which means we're probably about 30 seconds behind receiving those comments. So I'm going to put mention of Tom Daniels, and then he will see that comment. And Tom and I met through Tina Marie Woolfield. I don't know if you know Tina Marie in Metro Detroit. She's another connector of people, one of those people like Tom. So I see the comments are coming on LinkedIn, so they're a little delayed coming into StreamYard, but I can see they're working. So we'll get started here. So Christine, first of all, thank you for making yourself available. It was literally the night before, really no prepared remarks. It was a panel discussion, but you did such a great job, and I just really appreciate your thoughts. And you and I, we talked back and forth afterwards, and I'm like, hey, do you want to come on for a solo interview sometime? And you're like, sure, let's do this. I said, what do you want to talk about? And you said, and you guys can see it, it's right above me, pandemic parenting, how powering through now will help us to power up later. So before we jump into that chat, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into that discussion.
Sure. So a little bit of background. I actually, I'm from Queens, New York. That's where I was born and raised. And I actually ended up in Ohio for undergrad at Bowling Green, which is how we know.
Oh, okay.
And that's where I was actually a sociology major in college. And at that point, I was really wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and really just fascinated by everything related to the human condition. So what drives us? Why are people the way that they are? And it's funny, I'll never forget the class, and I can remember exactly where in the classroom that I was sitting as well. We were learning about industrial sociology, and the topic was really all about different cultures and how, depending on where you're from and how you were raised in the world, and how that influences business deals. And that's really, I would say, all that it took for me to be really hooked into the idea of what plays into the dynamics of the way that people behave and what engages them. And at that point, I really started exploring a career in a corporate framework where I'd be able to really satisfy this very high level of interest that I had in keeping people motivated and engaged. So that really led me to pursue my master's actually in human resources. And after a number of roles in the traditional HR space, I landed in resource management at a Big Four professional services firm. And the objective in resource management is really to keep employees productive in order to achieve business outcomes. But more than that, it's keeping them productive on something that they actually want to do, something that's interesting to them, to really drive retention. So, there's a little bit of an inherent challenge built into that, but the field was really a sweet spot for me, really marrying this very high level of interest I would say that I had in engaging with people with the very concrete and measurable result of watching productivity go up. And that's, very motivating. And so, who am I? I'm a wife, a mom, a stepmom, a daughter, sister, friend, citizen of my community. I'm an employee of a really wonderful organization called Baker Tilly. It's a top 10 accounting and consulting firm where I serve
Mhm.
as the leader of resource management. So really, along with my very, very talented team, and I believe some of them are watching today, I support the workforce planning strategy for our firm. And 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 that's a little bit about my background.
Wonderful. And look who's on now. I just put a comment below, Tom Daniels. I'm not sure if he saw my tag. He might have got a notification that I tagged in, or he might have saw that you were going to be on the show, and he it came out. But thank you, Tom, for joining us, and thanks for helping with the introduction. We have other folks, and I'll continue to pop their comments below. So if you guys are watching, please leave a comment. Just say hi. Let us know where you're watching from. You know how the weather's, where you are today. And even if you're watching this in playback later on today or on another day, still leave a comment below, because it's a way of helping to build up visibility for you on the platform. And we'll look for those comments and questions. So let's get into this conversation. Pandemic parenting. We didn't know what we were in for a year ago, did we, Christine?
Not at all. No.
And I mean, you talk about how powering through now will help to power us up later. I kind of feel like, I mean, I get what you're saying, the powering through, but I feel like, oh my gosh, it's just so much. We started with homeschooling, and then there's the emotional, psychological support we're trying to provide our kids. We're just doing so much on top of juggling a job and trying to figure out what to eat for dinner every night and trying not to get the virus and keeping our community safe. So give us some thoughts here on this topic, pandemic parenting. There may be a lot of parents that are watching and that are struggling with, and I think this is going to be a very inspirational talk. So what are your thoughts there to get us started?
Sure. So I'll give a little background to kind of lay the framework. I described my role within the resource management space, and to summarize that, what resource management is really all about is understanding the skill sets and experiences of people so that you can use that knowledge to provide them with new career opportunities and experiences. And so in order to do that really effectively, you need to be somewhat creative in thinking about how certain experiences are transferable across different situations. And so, with that in mind, I couldn't help but notice a very real parallel in the things that my husband and I were doing to keep things afloat at home in this pandemic and these crazy times, alongside the skills that we need in order to be really successful in our jobs. And so that's what I'll share some perspectives on.
Awesome. And I have a couple notes and questions and things I'll ask you, if that's okay with you, Christine. And
Sure.
Christine, help me with these questions too. We're like, what do we want to talk about in the show? So I want to start with this whole concept of work-life balance. Thoughts there? What is work-life balance, and what does it mean to you?
Sure. Well, it's the elusive balancing act, right? So I have to say, I'll start off by saying I don't love the phrase work-life balance. I think that the word balance really implies that these two things are at odds with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that as a society, if we continue with that view, we're really putting our working parents at a disadvantage. I'll tell you why. I have the one life, right? It's not my work over here and everything else is separate. In the remote environment, I live at work now and I work at home. And so it's
It's
all kind of
crazy.
it's all kind of connected, right? And so it's not a balancing act that keeps everything going. It's really the art of being able to transition between the two and maybe the three, depending on the complexity of what your life is all about right now, in a way that's fluid. And I really think that we need to stop telling our working parents that they're walking a tightrope with everything that they're trying to deal with right now. It's this self-fulfilling prophecy that something's going to drop. And instead, really give them a little bit of recognition for the way that they've integrated so many different areas of their lives this last year. So I would say one of my main takeaways that I hope folks come away with today is more employers should really be thinking about how to support their working parents, because
Right.
I think, look, if you're employing a working parent right now, yeah, you might be getting someone who is maybe a little scattered, right? They're doing a lot, but I would say this is a short-term blip in what really is going to turn into a very long-term benefit with a huge upside, because what we have right now is an entire generation of parents that are in resiliency boot camp, right? So they've been in this now for over a year. They've been tested. They're still out there fighting that battle every day. And when the dust settles, those employers that have not recognized this as an opportunity, I believe they're going to experience departures, an exodus of working parents who didn't really feel supported during this pandemic when they really needed it. And those individuals,
Mhm.
they're going to want to seek out other opportunities, right, to get that support that they're looking for. And so, look, of course, employers always run that risk, but I do believe that this has been amplified tenfold in the pandemic.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I even think about at the beginning of 2020, remember what it was? It was such a great market. And they were saying it's a job seekers market. There's so many opportunities and the economy was strong. And then everything kind of just, closed up. The positions weren't being posted. Companies weren't recruiting. They weren't hiring. They were laying people off. And the people that were thinking about making a move, I heard like some of them kind of went into almost like a state shelter in place. Like, I'm not going to move now because it's too dicey out there. I know what I have here versus, but when things do start to open up, they are, I think, to your point, going to reflect back on how was I treated during this pandemic? Did I feel it was a good environment? Do I still want to move? Maybe I don't want to move because I feel like my company took care of me and they respected me as a parent. But that's a really good point of view. And you mentioned you think this experience is going to help parents. I mean, how can that be? I kind of feel like I'm at wit's end right now. But how do you think this is helping us?
Yeah, no, look, I think this is absolutely going to position working parents for career growth. And,
Mhm.
and really, there's a number of reasons that that's the case. These parents have been through an incredibly humbling experience over the last year. I would say it's really no longer fashionable to be this Pinterest perfect mom or dad, right? So if you look at parenthood culture right now, if
Mhm.
you really pay attention, it's a bit more of this self-deprecating humor. It's about poking some fun at our failures and making light of them. And why is that? It's because there's a sense of community in that, and look, I'm saying this as a mother, this opinion is my own, but what you had before is the I can do it all mom.
Mhm.
And what you have now is, hey, I'm a mom. I cannot do it all. And by the way, I'm not ashamed of that. And, it's a little bit about taking back your power. So, how does that then translate into the workplace? Again, this is a group of people that is going to very quickly be able to assess a situation and be
Mhm.
very open about their capabilities. So, if something isn't realistic, they're going to tell you that up front. And I would argue that that type of authenticity would have been harder to come by pre COVID.
Mhm.
A lot of that, I think, really has to do with people's own insecurities, right? So
Yeah.
they've previously been conditioned to keep up appearances at any cost. And what we've shifted to is really a group of people that is trying to do a video presentation, and their child has just climbed up onto the kitchen table that they've been using as a desk, and this is happening to them multiple times throughout the day. And
Right.
this is part of the boot camp, right? Because with every interruption and distraction and frustration, it's making them much more resilient, that much more resilient each time. And so,
Mhm.
really, working parents are setting the example. They're asking for help, they're demonstrating that vulnerability. No one used to want to admit that they couldn't do something, right? It had historically been viewed as a sign of weakness when the reality is that it's a sign of
Yeah.
strength. So in that scenario of the child climbing on top of the table, and this is real, by the way, that's something that happens to my husband multiple
Did
times.
you send me a picture? Did you want
I
me to send
did,
it
yeah.
now?
No, let's go ahead.
Okay.
Let's pull that
Cue
up.
the picture. I'm cueing my producing team in the background. That's me, by the way, to show the pictures. So the interesting thing is when I'm doing these shows, Christine, I'm piloting and co-piloting. So I'm kind of pulling things up and having a conversation with you as I'm trying to pull up my
Yeah, no,
email.
I see that. It's a bit of a
Right, here we go. Okay, I think this is it, right? Are you seeing this up on screen right now? I love this. So what's happening here?
well, he's in the middle of a meeting, and with a number of key stakeholders, and my 2-year-old who was running around the house, and we were the child care because the
Oh my
daycare was
God.
closed, climbs up on top of the table. We're trying to juggle all these different things. I was on a call, he was on a call, and this is what goes on. And as you can see, he's kind of at the edge of the table. This is not an amazing situation to be in. And so, and look, this picture is not staged. This is all very painfully real. This happened more
Right.
than once. This one happened to be captured on camera. But look, in all seriousness, my
Hmm.
husband's in this situation, right? And what
Yeah.
did he do? He didn't stop the video and walk away. He didn't let our 2-year-old fall to the ground and hurt himself. He kept talking. He got him down off the table and he went on with his meeting. And
Yeah.
that ability to not get completely flustered, right? That's another area that this group of parents they're just masters in at this point. They absolutely nothing can rattle them. This is a very desirable quality, I would argue, in almost any field. And
Yeah.
one of the other things that I would add is if you think about these birthday car parades that have become extremely popular during COVID,
Yes.
I mean,
Hmm.
do you know who thought of that? I don't know specifically, but it was someone's parent, right? There was somewhere
Mm.
out there, a parent came up with this, and they really came up with a creative way to celebrate their child when circumstances had made the traditional methods impossible.
Right.
And that's the ingenuity of this group of parents. So here you have this group of people that you throw them into an impossible situation and they find a way against all odds to still do something positive.
Hmm.
You take that concept and you translate that into the workplace and think about the implications of a business leader who has that mindset, that
Yeah.
innovative ability. And look, this isn't someone that is going to allow their team to suffer in silence or throw in the towel when things inevitably get tough.
Mm.
This is a group of people who really know how to get creative to solve very complex problems, things that they've never experienced before. They know how to motivate others, keep them engaged. Look at, again, what all of us have done for our children that we care very deeply about
Right.
during this time frame. And these are the people that I would say that's very transferable in terms of driving retention within their organizations with teams that they're leading. And the last area that I would highlight is
Can I jump in for just a second? And I'll take the picture down off the screen. But I just want to,
sure,
first of all, was it you or your husband that took the picture? What you said it was
we
your
did.
during the.
Yeah, no, this is our dining room that became his office.
Okay. So did you? I mean, first of all, bravo. I mean, being parents during pandemic, anybody with little ours are older now, so we don't have the climbing on the table, having a temper tantrum in the middle of a conference call. But bravo for remembering to grab a picture so that
Yeah,
you can share, so you can say, hey, we're real, just like all the rest of you.
that's
And I'm
right.
also like, I mean, I know you shared the picture with me, and I'm like, part of me is, I'm like, he's on the edge of the table, but there's chairs. He'll fall. He'll be safe. You're always like going through the checklist. Is he okay? Is he safe? Okay. Are those flowers in the middle? Those are really beautiful. That's like the next thing I'm like, look at that centerpiece. Isn't that nice?
Yeah, like I said, it was our dining room. Nothing about this was ideal.
Yeah, right. No, it's just so real. And I think there's something that's to be said about being real during these times, Christine. And part of what I love about this topic is you're kind of making lemonade out of lemons out of this situation, right? You're learning things from going through this experience, but when you share them, it makes you so much more real. It's not overly produced. It's kind of like me. Sometimes I'm on video and I'm like, oh, my power cord's running out. And I'll go off camera and then I'll come back in. And then I'll get messages from people later on saying, thanks for doing that. Sometimes that happens to me too. So I think like the shared experience, you make yourself real. You're not like this perfect human being, person, parent.
Yeah.
You are real, and I think that's the relatability. I'm sorry, I wanted to jump in because I'm not sure if anyone else was kind of going through like the picture. You kind of dissect it. You're like, okay, the children, like I'm like, that's a pretty centerpiece. Oh, they got cough drops. Somebody must have a cold. Like there's all these elements
Right.
of the typical household
Yeah.
that picture really captured. So you
Right.
should frame that and put that up somewhere.
Yeah, we survived the pandemic and we made it. No, I agree. And I
Yeah.
think the point that you touched on is so so real, right? And it's something that so many of us I think would resonate with. It's not only displaying that vulnerability, but really taking that and translating into how you can make deeper connections with people that aren't these surface level, hey, who are you and how can we start getting engaged with each other. But I know for one, I would be much more interested in engaging with someone who I feel that I have this shared experience with.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing the photo and for making yourself a little vulnerable to share that story through.
Sure.
So let's shift the conversation a little bit. Let's talk about employers right now. There might be some employers watching, hiring managers, team managers, things like that. How can they support working parents? I mean, we're a year in at this point, so hopefully they figured it out. But what can they do now, and then what can they do in the future as things start to open back up again?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think I'm very fortunate to be part of an organization with a phenomenal leadership team that really recognizes this opportunity that we have to cultivate future leaders from our group of
Mhm.
working parents. And People Solutions at Baker Tilly, under the leadership of Todd Stokes, our managing partner, has put together a number of initiatives that really speak to working parents and make us feel seen. And I'll share a couple of ideas that others might be interested in. Some of the things that they've done are really tangible things, right? So providing access to things like care.com for childcare or OutSchool for virtual learning, sending back to school kits for folks that have school age kids. We also took a number of very deliberate actions to support our culture of flexibility. So implementing a no approval necessary flexible work arrangement for individuals at the firm who had their routines impacted by the pandemic, it's about letting them know they can work how and when they need to, and also disconnect days. So this is a concept I really love. These were a
Mm.
handful of days where we essentially shut down for the day and
Okay.
allowed people to truly disconnect and take these very, very well needed and very well deserved breaks. We have plans to continue a number of these initiatives
Mhm.
long after COVID passes. The other thing that I would note too, and this is more on the intangible, is it's demonstrating the behavior, right? So having firm leaders on video calls, very similar, Brenda, to what you were describing, with their kids running around in the background. So it's letting people know, look, we're all in the same boat, we're in it together, and we're going to get through it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And letting people know. I mean, I even heard I was in a call this morning and somebody said everybody was muted and they said, well, I'll unmute now because my dog's not barking. But if he starts barking, I'll have to mute. And people are like, no, 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 we want to see the dog. Like, pull him up into the camera. And like we don't have any pets in our home right now. So I love seeing people's pets. And, you get the cats on the lap and sometimes the dogs that are kind of like barking in the background. Then you pull them up for a second. They're all like excited, But
Yeah.
I think like, showing that you're real, that you're in a household just like everybody else and you have the same struggles, whether you're a parent of younger children, older children, or a fur parent, fur baby parent, right? You got a pet in the background that's going, but I think it's, we're all dealing with this. None of us were really set up in the house to work out of the house for a year. I mean, none of us were,
No.
able to do that, but I think that's a really valid point, demonstrating those behaviors and being real, So I'm kind of putting a couple of these up on screen as we're going through the tips here. Any other thoughts for folks here? And I guess shifting to, let's talk about the burdens of women, right? Because we're expected to be the caregivers. Even before pre-pandemic, I was always like, why are we the ones that have to coordinate the daycare, the pickup, the drop off? Oh, and cooking dinner and doing the grocery shopping and doing the laundry. And some of us are lucky. Like my husband does the laundry. I'm so blessed. I love that he does the laundry. But many of these responsibilities, quote unquote, are falling on us, and some are even more challenging now because you've got two working parents in the home. So talk to us a little bit about, advice that you would offer to women who are kind of struggling with some of these issues.
Yeah, no, I hear that and I get that completely. So in this, I can't speak from personal experience. My husband and I have an incredibly balanced partnership as it relates to those areas, similar to what you described. But so what's interesting is we spent the bulk of this conversation thinking about how we can apply skills that we've gained at home and apply them at work. But my view on this is actually to do the reverse. So take a look at the things that we know work in a professional setting for course correcting behavior. We have performance reviews. So whether you're part of an organization with a continuous feedback philosophy, or maybe all you do is you get one evaluation per year, one
Yeah.
way or another, you're getting feedback. And
Mm-hmm.
organizations mandate that because that's a way that we can encourage behaviors that we want to see more of and disengage in behaviors that are no longer serving us. And so we don't expect individuals to miraculously evolve on their own. We effectuate that change by providing them with feedback. And hopefully, if you're a good coach and a good teammate, you're getting down to the root of the problem and not just solving for the symptom of the problem. And so you really address what is actually causing the shortfall in performance. Are they overwhelmed? Were they confused about what the expectations were? I would venture to say that there aren't a ton of people out there having mid-year review performance conversations with their spouses or their co-parent, but
I'm just thinking right now, I'm going to give my husband, we're going to do 360 reviews.
yeah,
We're going to like evaluate each other and then ask our children to evaluate us as well. We're going to have a sit down family meeting and we're going to give each other, what do they call them? The performance action plan. Like I know employers have different acronyms for what that performance plan looks like and when we're going to meet again. I mean, I'm thinking as you're talking, I'm like, this is brilliant. We should have been doing this like months ago.
Right. Yeah, no, I think in a lot of cases that would probably be a very healthy dialogue.
I think seriously, it's like when is the time to have a conversation about a disagreement? Not when you're in the height of an argument about it, but it's like pick a time. And I've heard some families do every Sunday we're having a family meeting and let's talk about were there things that happened this week that are still weighing on you, things that bothered you, or, what's something that we're proud of? What's something that we achieved together as a family this week? For us, we've got a 16-year-old, as the pandemic has progressed, he's actually spent more time out of his room. We've bonded with him. So, that to me, it's like, I mean, I shared that with him. I'm like, it's really nice to actually get to talk to you because he was always kind of getting home from school, going up in his room, and and then he was doing karate and stuff. We didn't get to see him. So it's good to have that family discussion, I think, sometimes when you're not in that emotional yelling, argument phase.
Absolutely.
But I love that performance review. That's a great philosophy.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So so we're going to start to open this up for some Q&A, and we'll do that in just a few minutes. I'll start to invite our audience, if you guys have a question, to pop them up on screen. And it seems like there's a little bit more of a delay in the StreamYard. You'll notice, Christine, it took us a few minutes to get the conversation started, the comments started. So I'm going to start it a few minutes earlier in here. What I want to do is ask one final question, and then we're going to open this up to audience Q&A. So parents have become definitely much more vulnerable. You talked about that a little bit earlier. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, no, definitely. So I would say I can't make a generalization, right? I can't speak for all working parents across the board. So I don't know that everyone has necessarily become more vulnerable. But what I do think, I really believe that across the board, we've become as a society, and definitely working parents, much more comfortable with displaying that vulnerability in a very open way. So we're really living in a time right now with the pandemic and everything else that's going on, where mental health concerns are at an all-time high.
Yeah.
And what I think I'm seeing more of myself is people really normalizing things and discussing things that had historically carried a stigma. The other area, on a lighter note, is, look, if you ask any working parent what's going to get them more likes on Instagram or Facebook, the photo of the perfectly organized house, or the photo of the cupcakes that exploded in the oven because they were dealing with something else, or their child got a hold of scissors and gave themselves exactly, or gave themselves it's the latter, right? And so parents are hungry for that. They're hungry for that connection, things that are real, as you described, and they want to know that they're not in it alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. And I want to invite her on. So if you guys have had situations over the past year that you feel like you've been particularly vulnerable, like there's things that happen, but when you've shared it with others, whether sharing a picture on a Zoom call like we were just doing, or maybe posting something on social media. And I've seen a lot, especially on LinkedIn, people posting like working from home, here's what my setup looks like. And you got the cat walking across the keyboard and the children that are like screaming in the background, and fires, no, not literally, but it feels like it, fires burning. But I remember there was one day at our house where my husband, he set up a home office, quote unquote, in the basement, a makeshift home office. And I have a home office. And then I think my daughter was in one room, my son was in another, and we were all pulling on the Wi-Fi. And then the Wi-Fi went out. Like there was an issue in the neighborhood, and you could hear room by room, we would say, is the internet out? Is the internet out? Is the internet's out? And it was like going around the room. And then we all lost connection, and then we all came into the living room together, and everybody's out, and we're trying to get things to go back on. But then I think we all talked about it later. My husband and I talked about it later on he was on a Zoom call, and I was doing a webinar or something, and we were talking about, hey, did anybody else lose internet today, and what did you do? And it's definitely a challenge, but I think sometimes just sharing those experiences with people online can help to make you more real. And like I said, if anyone has a story they want to share, drop it in comments. If you have questions for Christine, feel free to bring them up. And we're talking today about pandemic parenting, how powering through now will help us to power up later. And Christine, there may be some folks that joined late and they missed a little bit of that description. So could you summarize for us again, what do you mean by powering through now, how that's going to help us to power up again later?
Absolutely. It's really just the concept of, this has been very hard. And the experiences and the skills that we have gained through this pandemic, which I know sometimes you're just not thinking about them, but you are gaining very real lessons, and you're learning so much during this time. That's going to position you for future career growth. It's going to make you an incredible leader and an asset to your employer.
Yeah. And a really nice way, if I think about the expression, that which does not kill us makes us stronger.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think a number of us can probably attest to that.
Yeah, and living through, and you were talking about, like, we're going through a boot camp right now. And do you remember, back in the day, Christine, of March of 2020, when things first started happening, and we were all like, oh, this is nothing, it's not going to affect us. And then, they shut down the schools in here in Michigan. And I remember thinking, it was back in March, and at the time, I think they were planning on a 2 to 3 week shutdown, and then it was going to be spring break. So we were going to be off until middle of April. We're like, oh, wow, we're going to be home a whole month. That's a long time. Do you remember that? Like, I mean, what were your thoughts back in March of last year? Were you like ready? I mean, were you bracing yourself for the month, or were you like thinking it was going to be quick too?
Yeah, I mean, we were told at the time, right, that it was going to be a 2 week thing. And I remember saying, and I have to laugh now, right, looking back, but I remember saying to my husband, maybe we should buy 3 weeks worth of stuff. I know that's crazy, but
Yeah.
just in case.
Right.
If
Just in
if
case,
moving
right?
out, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we had no way of knowing. And I think even if the experts really knew what was happening, if they had said, "Hey, you're going to go home from work Friday, so take the things that you'll need for the next year," we'd be like, "Wait, what did he just say? What did she
Yeah.
just say?" Like we would have said, "You're crazy." And I think about like when I was little, growing up, we had family in Pennsylvania, and I'm in Metro Detroit, so we would drive to Pennsylvania. It was about a 6 hour drive. And when you're a kid, you don't have no concept of 6 hours. That's just a long time in the car. And you'd get on the road for about a half hour, and the parents would give you snacks and stuff. We didn't have electronics, so they'd give us snacks and coloring books and stuff. And a half hour into the ride, I'd ask my dad, "Are we there yet?" And dad would turn around and say, "Almost, just a little bit longer." And then, you'd keep snacking and playing and fighting with your brothers and sisters in the car. And then another half hour would go by. You say, "How about now? Are we there yet?" "Yep, we're closer." And if my dad had said when we got in the car, "We're not going to be there until 5 o'clock in the afternoon," we would have been like, 5 o'clock. We would have like
Right.
had a temper tantrum. So I
Yeah.
think it's kind of like we're extending it out bit by bit. How about for you at Baker Tilly? At what point, I mean, I'm assuming it was in March of last year where employees were told gather the things and go home. Are you still all working from home? Are you coming back into the office now? What's happening there?
Yeah. No, we're very largely remote at this point. And look, with the pandemic ongoing, our firm really doesn't have a specific timeline for returning to the offices. Our priority right now really is related to our reopening plans. We want to meet or exceed what's required of us from a regulatory standpoint, and really just keep our team members safe and engaged. And frankly, as I described, it's the culture of flexibility.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is you probably have figured out, how to make it work. And 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year. I mean, we figured out how to make it work. We've all done it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're going to start to kind of wrap up the conversation here for today. I'm not seeing comments popping in, and I'm just going over to LinkedIn to double check. Sometimes the StreamYard and LinkedIn don't play well together where the comments aren't being fed back over to us. I do see that we had a couple of your coworkers on, and I'm not sure if you saw those comments earlier. So I'm going to pull those up from a little bit earlier here just to see. And I don't know, do you know Lauren Goldstein? I'm not sure if you know her at all. She said hi, Christine, so she called you by name.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Okay,
Hi,
good. Well,
Lauren.
thank you, Lauren, so much for watching. We appreciate it. And then we did see Tom Daniels that was on. And Joy somebody that you work with? Because she's
Yep.
calling you by name as well. Are
Hi,
these coworkers, friends? Who are these folks that are
all
watching?
all a mix, right? So you pulled up a couple of people that I know from a number of different venues, so I really appreciate them joining. Thank you.
That's so nice. And then we had Barbara Connolly joining us from Birmingham, Michigan. Um, then we had Janelle must be on your team. So is she one of the folks that's on your team over at Baker
Absolutely.
Tilly?
Yep,
Awesome.
she's one of our resource managers. She's wonderful.
Oh, thank you, Janelle, for watching. I think it's so awesome when I do these interviews with folks and and Christine, you did such a great job too. You reached out to me beforehand and you said, "Can I share it?" And I said, "Absolutely, share it with Baker Tilly, share it with your team." Because the great thing here is even though we're talking about pandemic parenting, um, this is helping to build visibility for you and for your organization. And engagement is engagement. So whether it's a team member, a friend, a family member, anybody who jumps into the comments and leaves a comment, that is helping to get this video broadcast out to more people, which in turn is helping to build visibility for our good friend, I'm pointing the wrong way, our good friend Christine, as well as for Baker Tilly. So if you're watching and you're shy, don't be shy. Leave a comment. You can just say hi. You don't have to overthink it. Sometimes I work with people, and I was on a call with a client this morning. He's like, "I'm not sure what to say when I comment on other people's posts." And I'm like, just do 5 or more words. Don't overthink it. It can be, "Hi, joining you from Southeast Michigan." You don't even have to tell us what city you're watching from, but just a quick comment, something like that is going to help to broadcast the message out. So Tom, it looks like he had to pop off, so he'll be listening to the playback and the recording. So appreciate Tom you asking that question. And then Robert, I'm not sure if you know Robert. He said he's out in the backyard watching. And this is like the multitasking part of parenting, right, Christine?
Absolutely. Yeah.
listening to the podcast or the Clubhouse or the LinkedIn Live while your kid is doing something and your kid doesn't feel like you're neglecting them. So you're kind of able to multitask a little bit at the same time, right?
That's right.
Very
Absolutely.
good. And Robert's just adding a comment there, and I appreciate when men are commenting and they're sharing in our struggles. Not that I want to see anybody struggling. Don't get me wrong there, but I appreciate when men are feeling this as well, because it shows that there's shared duties and shared responsibilities at home. Robert, I know right now you're a great father, and he is saying he's already feeling powered up from this discussion, Christine. So some great inspiration. Now the comments are all of a sudden they're popping up. So I'm not sure if you guys are starting to add comments in or if they're just starting now to appear. Janelle says happy to join. So sometimes it's like talking to the camera when I say, hey, Janelle, thanks for watching. Then Janelle comments back and adds it in. Jennifer saying great insight and happy to hear employers truly understand the parenting situation we are in during work hours. And I almost laugh a little bit at that work hours, Christine, because no longer do you leave work at a certain time and shut off and go home. Like
right.
Work is home is work. It's a 24-hour cycle almost, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, definitely.
And Christina is saying, great conversation, not a parent yet, but a lot of great tips. Lucky to have Christina. You have such a great team. So nice to see folks joining on. And Christina, thank you so much for joining in. When and if you do become a parent someday, you'll get all kinds of advice thrown at you. And, hopefully you'll be parenting not during a pandemic, because I don't think it's something any of us would have ever hoped that we would have the experience. But I will say, Christine, for me, like I said, my 16-year-old son, he's out of his room. He's talking to us more. We as a family, because we've had to shelter in place together, we've played board games together. We went on walks together. We do sidewalk talk together. A lot of those things we probably wouldn't have done had, my son been out with his friends and my daughter been at Girl Scouts and doing these other things. So I'm finding even ourselves, like to your point of being more creative, we're more creative on the things that we do together. Because let's be honest, Christine, I don't think any of us were designed to be in our house with our family for 1 year straight. I don't think any of us were built for that.
No, I agree. Look, I mean, it's been a long, tough road. There is no denying that. Working parents have been through something this year that I think, frankly, could be described as trauma, right? Depending on what's happened. This isn't about sugarcoating the very real challenges and in some cases blessings, but of everything that we've been through in the last 12 months. But really what we're talking about here is, while we focus on survival, let's not lose sight of those lessons, right? In this home stretch, we're gaining so much. And I do think that what we're going to be left with when the survival mode era passes, it's this group of working parents that's going to emerge from the trenches. They're going to be highly skilled in creative thinking, leadership under immense pressure. They don't get rattled. They switch gears at the drop of a hat. They know their limits and they own them. They display that vulnerability, right? As we discussed. I really believe, they're really going to be ready for any challenge that comes their way. They're going to come out on top because they don't know any other way. This is what they've been doing for an entire year. And these are the people I'd want in my organization.
Absolutely. It's all about kind of what we learn and pulling it back in, and then, recycling some of what we learned into work and taking some of what we learned from work and bringing it into the home situation. So I really enjoyed the conversation here today, Christine. I want to pull your LinkedIn profile up on screen, and I'm just going to kind of close off the photo in the background here and share your LinkedIn URL. While I am doing that, Christine, are you open to accepting invitations from anybody who's watching the discussion here today, or what's kind of your philosophy on?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That would be great. Thank you.
All right, great. And what I will tell people too is that, let me just think, I think it might be this one right here. It's a little bit of the piloting, co-piloting. I'm like, which tab is it? It's this tab right here. So what I will tell people is, when you visit Christine's profile, you see it's up on screen right now. If you go to LinkedIn, just type in her name, you'll find her profile. You'll see on your version, it will say like in a connect button. When you invite her to connect, add a note and say something like, hi, Christine, I enjoyed your discussion on LinkedIn Live with Brenda today, where you were talking about pandemic parenting. Let's connect on LinkedIn. So give some context, remind Christine that you are watching the show here today in your invitation to connect. And as we start to wrap up the conversation here today, Christine, any final comments you want to offer to parents about this pandemic parenting, or anything else you want us to know kind of about your company, Baker Tilly, as well?
Sure. Yeah. Look, I would say, thank you all for joining. And I think it's all about that vulnerability and that very real connection that I think a number of us are facing related to the organization for anyone who might be interested in a career move. We are actively hiring. I think you'll find a number of really fantastic opportunities on the career page at bakertilly.com. And also on our website, if you search for COVID, you'll find a COVID resource center for any business-related COVID questions, articles, podcasts, all kinds of interactive tools, really to help you learn about everything from keeping your workforce safe to opportunities associated with the American Rescue Plan. It's a lot, really good, useful information for different industries and helping organizations to navigate from recovery to growth, very similar to what we're doing as parents, right? That navigation from the recovery stage into the growth stage. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that evolution happen.
Yeah, being on the other side of it, right? And you talked earlier about trauma. I think we are living through trauma, and one thing we know about trauma is when you're in the midst of it, you can't feel the effects of it because you're still going through it. You're still trying to survive it. You're still trying to thrive on the other side of it. Once we come out on the other side and things have kind of settled down, I think there's going to be a whole other category of things that we're going to have to work through, counseling and things. I mean, even being out in public, being around people. I don't know about your kids, but we go out in public now. We're always masked and we're always very cautious about social distancing. But imagine that day, Christine, when we're all vaccinated, the virus is gone, and we're not able to wear a mask, and we tell our child to go and play in the playground with other kids without a mask. I mean, I think they're going to be, holding back a little, and we're going to have to nudge them and, make sure that they feel comfortable and supportive. I want to make sure, did I get the right webpage, careers? Does this look like the right webpage for the careers page for Baker Tilly? And I'll just encourage you guys, I'm going to drop the link into comments on LinkedIn right now as well. If you're interested in checking out that careers page, if you know somebody who's in career transition, share that link with them. And I put the link, the webpage up on screen so you can see what it looks like there. Well, thank you so much, Christine. This has been such a delightful conversation. I feel like the hour just kind of flew by on us. It was such
I agree.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you again. And I'll invite our people that are watching, if you're just joining right now, you can watch the playback as soon as we're done. You can go back to my timeline, my activity feed on LinkedIn, and you can watch the full video from start to finish. And I'm trying to navigate just to pull one final comment up on screen here. If you did enjoy this discussion, especially if you're a parent and you're dealing with this pandemic parenting, trying to power through while powering up, do me a favor, go back onto my activity feed after we're done, click to share the video, and then add a comment of 5 or more words. And you can just say, hey, I'm parenting during the pandemic, and I'm learning techniques that are going to help me to power up in the future as well. I might even share this and say, hey, I'm going to give my spouse a 360 performance evaluation. Something on there, right? So something, and then tag Christine if you could when you share that along. And even if you're watching this in playback later, you could still leave a comment or a question in the video below, because we will make sure to share the link with Christine so that she can respond back to that. Thank you again, Christine. I really appreciate your time, and hope you have a wonderful afternoon. What's next for you on the agenda? Back to work, going for a walk, anything exciting today?
Back to work, and then picking up our boys from daycare, and then starting our second job of the day.
There you go. Second job, right? Second shift, if you will.
Exactly. The night shift.
There you go. Well, hang in there, Christine. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. This has been Social Media Pie with Brenda Meller. I would invite you, if you want to learn more, to go to mellermarketing.com, and you can click on the subscribe button. I don't see it up on my little ticker here, so I'm going to just go on, and I'll just ask you if you could please share the video along, share something that you learned, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day. Stay healthy and stay safe, everyone, and we'll see you again later on this week. Take care.